Welcome to another edition of the Rashad Mills Show, courtesy of PowerOfPurposeRadio.com. Of course, I'm your host, Rashad Mills, and I'd like to thank you for actually tuning in this evening. I know many of you out there, it's other things that you could be doing and actually watching at this time, but I appreciate you tuning in. Speaking of, my level of appreciation is really high because I have another amazing guest with me, a gentleman that's one of the hardest working authors, community advocates. What else? What other adjectives could I use to describe you, man? You're a busy man.
Superman, I guess. I don't know.
Superman, I like that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is amazing author, Mr. Kevin Shird. Thank you, Kevin, for actually joining me. Prior to actually coming on, we actually talked about your busy schedule. You're here, there, and a little bit of everywhere. So you actually have a break. And again, you took the time. So I know my viewers out there here locally in Baltimore and certainly abroad appreciate what you have been doing. Just kind of tell me what it's been like this last probably 6 months or so, man. You've been...
Oh, it's been crazy. It's been nuts. I got to get some sleep because I'm headed to Charlotte, North Carolina on Wednesday night, tomorrow night, actually, to speak at the Johnson C. Smith University in Charlotte, which is another historical black college. But so the last 6 months has just been amazing as far as literally having two books out at the same time.
Wow.
That's just usually not how it works.
Right. That's typically unheard of, right?
It's really not. But, unorthodox is the way of life in Baltimore. So. But just launching Lessons of Redemption over in London, that was amazing over the summer and doing the interviews with the BBC and just talking to people, in another country about Baltimore,
right,
and about the issues we face and the struggles and people being so excited about Baltimore over in London. That was in Ireland.
Wow,
that was crazy.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think Baltimore has this international feel where people are interested in what Kevin has to say about a city that most of them have never been to and probably will never make it to? Why do you think it's such a high level of excitement?
Well, so I know a portion of it. So they are avid Wire fans.
Okay.
Right. So a portion of it is that they're like
the intrigue of it.
The intrigue. So they love the television show The Wire. Like they love it over there. So that was part of it because I got a lot of questions about The Wire and a lot of questions I couldn't even answer. But as it relates to Baltimore and then the other, I think it was just the social issues that we deal with here in Baltimore. I mean, in America. So they kind of think we crazy when it comes to the gun issue, because in the UK you cannot walk into a store and buy a gun. That doesn't exist.
Wow. So what is that process like there?
You can't own a gun. You need special. So you got to have a real special case to own a gun in the UK. There is no gun store. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
Right. So their gun violence is almost non-existent. Now, they have murders in the country, but the numbers are like in the double digits as far as homicides. So they have a knife issue. But I'll take a knife issue over a gun issue any day.
Any day.
So just hearing like the issues that they face there and just talking to them, and the people were amazing, man. It's friendly, and it was crazy because every block you walked, you heard a different language. So every block you walked, you heard a Nigerian, Israeli, a Russian, Italian, Spanish, French. Every block you walked, it was a different language being spoken.
Wow.
And it just reminded me that it's a big world out there. But people are really friendly and nice, and they were really intrigued by Baltimore.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about the books that actually took you to this place, this international success, which you've had some international success. The first book here, the most recent book, Uprising in the City, Made in America. Now, Kevin, I had the opportunity to actually read and just recently finish this book. And as a longtime Baltimore, and I've had the opportunity to live other places, but as a resident of Baltimore, growing up in the city, my 38 years of living, and a lot of these issues, they felt like they were already there, and they just boiled over. So the first question, Kevin, I want to ask you, April the 27th, 2015, what was that like for you as an individual who grew up in Baltimore and just is really familiar with the city? What was that like watching your city go through this sort of tumultuous period?
It was surreal, man. It was surreal. It was almost like an out of body experience. It's almost like you watching a movie on television, but you're actually in the movie.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? So, but it was also scary because I was really worried about those kids at Mondawmin Mall because I was really worried. I was actually thinking one of those kids could get killed, right? Because of the mistrust with the Baltimore City Police Department, especially during that time frame. I thought that one of those kids could I thought one of those kids was going to get killed that day.
Wow.
Because they're throwing rocks and bottles. Police were armed with deadly weapons, not a rock and a bottle. So I was really concerned, hoping that nothing serious like happened to those kids that day, because that was my major concern. And again, it was surreal, and that whole period, I think it was a period of uncertainty for a lot of people, because we've never been there before. Like I wasn't born at the time when we had the last major riot in Baltimore, and that was in 1968 when Martin Luther King was assassinated. But so this was all new to me, and it was new to most of the people that I knew. You know, of course, some folks that were around during 1968 and they experienced that situation. But so it was really like uncertain, like where do we go from here and what's next? Because I don't think most people even thought that we were even capable of what happened on April the 27th, and not even just the 27th, but the week leading up to that with the nonviolent protests that took place downtown, even by the stadium. And I don't even think people thought we were capable to organize in that way.
Well, one of the questions that I want to ask you is, looking back at this, we're a year past this point.
Right.
Do you think that it was beneficial at all? And when I say beneficial, I definitely want to preface my statement, but I actually saying some of the destruction that occurred, I don't want to justify that at all. But do you think the message of the African-American community as it relates to police brutality, do you think that message is any clearer now? Or did we destroy our own community for no good?
No, that was needed. That was needed. You know what I mean? So I ruffled some people's feathers when I say it, but that needed to happen.
Why? Just playing devil's advocate. Why do you think that happened?
Because our leadership needed a wake up call, and they got one in not necessarily the worst way, but in a not so comfortable way. They were uncomfortable, and they needed to be uncomfortable, because sometimes uncomfortable is a good place, because it generates action. And so it generated action. It generated the Justice Department looking into the police brutality issues. It generated the White House looking at the issues in Baltimore. It generated the U.S. Department of Education, making sure that our young people now can receive free breakfasts in schools. It generated policy change around police brutality. So it was uncomfortable, but uncomfortable gets people going sometimes, and it needed to happen.
Oh, I believe that.
And that's just my opinion. And I'm hoping that that's not the end of it. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to write about that issue, because I don't want it to be forgotten. Because a lot of times, things will happen and people will get excited, and then a short time later, we're back to the same thing. Don't forget what happened on April 27th, because the reality is this: 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, I don't care how people view it, that is a part of history.
Absolutely.
So our grandkids, 30 years from now, they're gonna be looking in the history books, or 40 years from now, 50 years from now, saying, "Wow, this happened in my city." But why? And there has to be something recorded where they can look back and say, "Okay, now I understand what happened in April 2015 in Baltimore City."
Wow. Kevin, you just mentioned, and you must have been reading my mental notes, because I was actually going there. You just mentioned a 3-letter word that to me is the central point. And I've always talked to people, and as it relates to the riot, and I want to get this answered, and you'll have various opinions, but this book provides a great perspective of it. Tell the viewing audience out there why you think the riots happened. That's so critical, because we're in the aftermath and we understand what we plan to do moving forward. But why did it happen? Was it the economy? Was it just police brutality? Was it a combination of things? So
it was so, in my mind, Freddie Gray was the spark, right? But the fuel had already been laid, right? The fuel, and that was Freddie Gray ignited the fuel. That was the explosion, the spark from the Freddie Gray death. But the fuel had already been laid. The fuel of poverty, generational poverty, unemployment, hopelessness to a lot of our young people, a poor education system, right, and mass incarceration, right, because I always look at it like this: when a man can't find a way to feed his family, he's gonna figure out a way to eat, and that's what we don't want as a society.
Absolutely,
we don't want our people going to the streets to figure out a way to eat, right? We don't want our people involved in illegal activity and dealing drugs. We don't want that kind of stuff. But I understand this about black men: he's gonna figure out a way to eat. And so when you talk about poverty, when you talk about generational poverty, when you talk about unemployment, you're talking about, in Baltimore City, almost 25% of the population is living in poverty.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Absolutely.
So, to be honest,
how does that change, Kevin? How does that change? You mentioned so many poignant points, but is there just one that we start to address more than the other one? How, as a society, do we address these and say we're going to start here? Because I don't want to use the term impossible, but it seems very difficult to begin to attack them all at the same time.
No, so this is what we elect our politicians to do. We elect you for this reason. This is your job. Like, don't go after the job. Like, if I can't flip burgers, I ain't going to get a job at McDonald's. Right? If you're not capable of doing the job, don't go after the job. Your job is to make sure that the people are in a better place. So if you got to juggle policy changes when it comes to mass incarceration, police brutality, the education system, poverty, and unemployment, handle your business, or get out of the job and allow somebody that has the capability to do the job. Like, nobody said being a politician was going to be easy. You went after this job. You wasn't drafted. It wasn't forced on you. You know what I'm saying? And so we got to get out of that mindset. You work for us. You asked for this. Now you got it. Now handle your business, or you're fired. Like, that's some real stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, we gotta. we gotta stop being so passive with these. You know, it's funny because we'll walk into a store and not get great customer service, and want to wild out. Like my food was cold, or you took a long time to come.
You forgot to catch up.
You forgot to catch up. But we won't do that with our politicians, and they'll be in the job for 10 years and ain't done nothing, and we won't push them for better service.
So you think that in itself is problematic, the way that we address or the lack of address that we have for our public officials? You think that's problematic?
Well, they are policymakers. Like they create legislation, they move policy forward to help service the community. Like that's their job. That's what they do, and so that's the person that we put in that situation. Let's just talk about police brutality or criminal justice reform, right? And a lot of people aren't aware of this. But so if you go to the internet, you Google it, and you find tons of articles on this issue of zero tolerance policing. So in 2004, Mayor Martin O'Malley thought it was smart to employ zero tolerance policing.
That's been talked about at great
right.
length.
And on that year, in 2004, there were 100,000 arrests in Baltimore City.
Wow.
Right? How do you make 100,000 arrests in a city where there's only 600,000 population?
Wow.
So 1/6 of the city was arrested that year.
Wow.
So one out of 6 people were arrested in 2004 in Baltimore City. Now, most of the arrests were petty crimes, loitering, small amounts of drugs, littering. Right. That was the majority of those arrests in 2004. 100,000 arrests were petty crimes. This is the problem. But those people ended up with a criminal background,
which ultimately will affect their ability to
employment.
Right. Okay.
So did anybody think that maybe this zero tolerance policy is not a good idea when we got to 60,000 arrests? Didn't somebody down in City Hall say, well, maybe this is a little bit too much?
So you think it just was swept under the rug? Nobody thought it was important?
Well, nobody thought it was important looking forward. Nobody thought that, okay, what do we do 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, when this man that was arrested can't find a job because he's got a criminal background? Now, nobody's saying have anarchy in the streets. Like, nobody's saying don't arrest a person who's committing a crime, right? We're talking about smart policing, right? I don't need Baltimore City Jail filled up with a bunch of heroin addicts because there's nothing for them in Baltimore City Jail. They need treatment. So let's start having smart policing, especially when it comes to substance abuse, right? Because we got a huge substance abuse problem in the city.
Absolutely.
But putting them in jail, that's not the answer. You know what I mean? And so I just use that as one example of poor policies when it comes to criminal justice, our criminal justice system. And then you go into the over sentencing of that's a whole nother issue. The over sentencing, this whole crack cocaine thing that we sent men 45 years and 50 years for nonviolent drug offenses. So policy, that's where it starts, because the policy that's what literally governs the people. Like what we can and what we can't do. Everything from poverty to education. Right? How our kids, what's the policies in place around our kids being educated in Baltimore City?
So policy is the central focus in terms of promoting change. Now, looking back at this situation, are we better as a city? Are we really better as a city as a whole? Now, the national spotlight was on Baltimore for a while, so a lot of the issues that many people can say went undressed, now they at the highlight, they're at the forefront of the policymakers here in Baltimore. But looking back, really, if you drive up a Pennsylvania Avenue down to North Avenue and you look, are we really better, or was that particular period of the riots, did it just bring some attention and now Baltimore is right back being Baltimore? That's the question I want to toss to you.
No, we're better. We're better because of this. We're better because now our leaders know that if we don't get something done, you're going to hear from us. Mm-hmm. So now we are better because prior to that, I mean, you're talking about decades of just bad management, decades. So this thing ain't start with Stephanie Rollins Blake, right? It's deeper than Stephanie Rollins Blake. It has existed much longer than she's been mayor of Baltimore, right? So when you say, is Baltimore better now? We're better because the message was heard. Mm-hmm. Now, how do we turn the corner? How does that message turn into policy, which starts affecting the people on the ground, the people on Pennsylvania Avenue, the people on North Avenue, the people on Chester Street, right? How does that now trickle down to them to make sure that they get what they need to have a better life? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, making sure that the people have a better life. And if that's not the goal of a leader or a politician, and my question is, why are you here?
That's a heck of a question, and hopefully they will be able to, address some of those questions so people can actually feel like that Baltimore is actually moving in the right direction. Because to be quite honest with you, Kevin, a lot of people that I talked to, they felt like that the riots was, as you said, it was an awakening of, the politicians, the policymakers here in Baltimore, but ultimately not a lot has changed. So let's hope, especially during this election season. I think what you just said is you highlighted another reason why it's very important to go out and exercise your right to vote, so the policymakers can make change, so we can see that effective change in the communities and neighborhoods in which we live in. Now, Kevin, speaking of change, we talked about your last book, Uprising in the City, Made in America, and I think I would be doing a disservice to the viewing audience to not talk about lessons of redemption. Man, I had an opportunity to read this one, and I think me personally, I think this one was a lot of people can really, growing up in a city like Baltimore, I know they can feel
personal.
Yeah, they can feel that. It's something that they can actually feel, because there's a Kevin Shird in their family. There's a Kevin Shird who's next door, somebody who's, maybe made the wrong choices but been able to turn that around. Right. So when you look back, man, and again, I had the opportunity to read that. When you look back and you see that body of work that you created right there and where you are now, you're traveling internationally, what does that feel like? And then to know that you have such a huge impact, I should say, on the city. So what does that feel like? Because this was your baby as it relates to the books.
Yeah, that was a heck of a journey right there, and it's crazy because the journey hasn't stopped. So, the audio book will be in Target stores starting on Black Friday.
Wow, congratulations!
So that was like huge. So Target stores all across the country.
Wow,
1,900 Target stores, and then I'm working on a small documentary about portions of my life, but incorporating the book, of course, because the book is about my life. And so it's crazy in that it literally took on its own. The book literally went on its own journey, because So let me just go back a little bit. In 2014, I self-published that book, and the reaction I got from the people was crazy. It was like, people that had read it, and early on I was kind of shook about it. I was like, wow, that's weird. But then I started to realize, man, you're touching people.
Absolutely.
Right? So it took me a while to figure it out, and I was like, okay, now I get it. And so I self-published in 2014. 2015, a publisher in based in London, Maverick House Publishing. They saw the book online, and they offered me a deal to publish the book.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is like London. Like, it was crazy because at first I thought it was like a prank email. Like, my cousin is in jail in Nigeria. He need 10,000. Like, I thought it was one of those deals at first. Right. And then I went online and checked it out, and it was like, yeah, this is legit. And then I figured, like, this is crazy. And it launched over in the UK. And like I told you, when I went over there, I mean, it was the people were crazy. I mean, we did about 13 interviews on the BBC, which was heard all across the world, which is nuts. You know, and people are calling in from like North Africa and France and all kinds of places. And we were going into bookstores over there signing books, and people are loving the book, and they're loving, you know, this story about Baltimore. And I'm like, wow, this is like crazy. But you know, I think the foundation that was created early on with, like, the mother of the heroin addict, right? Or the sister of the guy that was murdered in the streets, or the uncle of the guy that's doing like 50 years in prison right now. The messages I would receive from those people about or have read the book, that was the stuff that really like enlightened me and made me really understand how important the message was, but also how important the work is. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I have this thing, right? You do good work, your work will speak for itself. You know what I'm saying? You just do the work, and the work will speak for itself. And so just doing the work, because, you know, prior to the book, I was doing the work in drug prevention and talking to young people about staying out the streets and not making poor choices to end up in prison, and to learn from my story and my mistakes. Don't do it and find out it didn't work out. Don't learn that way. Learn from the mistakes I made. I'm telling you, that's a bad idea.
You don't have to touch the stove
in the streets
to realize it's right. Right.
And so that book was just like, the whole thing was just like, the journey it's been incredible. Incredible.
One of the things, Kevin, that you said that I really want to illuminate to the viewers out there is that quote that you just said, do the work and it will actually speak for itself. I mean, the principle of this radio station is finding your purpose. So I'm sure there's somebody out there watching right now that they're actually questioning, whatever respective field that they are in, is it worth it? And again, you just heard Kevin, a very successful author, traveling around the country, not just Baltimore, around the country and the world. He just basically told you that once you put in the work, it will speak for itself. So I think that was very important and profound. So, Kevin, we're actually coming toward the end of the show. But what I do with all my guests, it's called Rapid Fire. Okay. So I'll set you up, basically. Set you up in a good way, lead you into a topic, and just to hear your response. And none of these are pre-recorded or pre-rehearsed. In 5 years, Kevin will be where?
Kevin will be premiering his movie, Lessons of Redemption.
And who is the ideal actor for Kevin?
I thought about Denzel, but he's getting a little old now, man.
Long in the tooth.
He's getting a little old, yeah. So I'm thinking maybe the brother in Creed. I can't think of his name. Was it Michael Jordan? Michael Jordan, right?
I think it is Michael Jordan.
Yeah,
okay.
The brother. But real talk, I found that not a whole lot in this world is impossible. If you really want it, you can get it. And so, and I said the same thing with the book, and then the second book, and then the speaking, and then the documentary. Like, this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna make it happen. I have no idea how, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Right.
And so, yeah, in 5 years, that's what I want to see.
The next book will be titled what? And I know I'm throwing you on the spot.
No, Life Plus 35. So I'm about 85% done the third book, and it's right now it's tentatively titled Life Plus 35.
Wow.
And it's about a friend of mine that I was incarcerated with that's doing life plus 35 years right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's about, it's about mental health and trauma as it relates to violence, right? But that book is called Life Plus 35 right now.
Man, you already have me intrigued. I'm ready to pre-order mine already, man. You have me intrigued. So the last rapid fire question: Kevin's favorite author is?
Wow, that's deep.
Tough one. Tough one.
Toni Morrison.
Why?
I think that she's just so deep, and she forces you to think when you read her material. It forces you to think. You know what I mean? And when something forces you to think, that's growth right there in small ways, but that's growth. And so I think her work is just incredible. I would just, one day if I could ever reach that, a quarter of what she's accomplished as an author, I would have lived a satisfied life.
Well, I think you're well on the way based on your first two books and some of the things that you're actually doing now. It was certainly a pleasure having you on the show. But before we leave, let everybody out there know that's watching how they can get in contact with you if they need you for a speaking engagement or if they want to purchase either one of your fantastic books. And also you do a lot on social media.
So Lessons of Redemption, you guys. Lessons of Redemption. You got to take a look at that. So this book can be purchased on Amazon, bookstores across Baltimore, Red Emma's on North Avenue, the Ivy bookstore here in Baltimore. But online, it can be purchased literally anywhere. If you Google Lessons of Redemption. And then Uprising in City is literally the same thing. Amazon.com, Red Emma's book and coffee shop on North Avenue, the Ivy bookstore, and anywhere online. Google Uprising in the City, Lessons of Redemption, and we'll make it happen. Twitter, Kevin, KEVIN _ Shird, SHIRD. Facebook, Kevin Shird. Instagram, Kevin Shird. I'm all over social media, man. I just love social media, but I can be reached anywhere online. My information is all over the place.
Kevin, thank you for coming out, sharing some information with us, certainly as a gentleman who's made just a remarkable change in your life. I think for a lot of people watching, I think it's very inspiring to see what you're doing, and it's motivating because you've reached a level of success, but you haven't stopped. You're continually pushing the bar. So it's very important to see, and I know you do a lot of speaking with young people, and that's what's really touching my heart because you've reached success, but you're giving back, and you're pulling some young kids along the way, so we certainly appreciate it. Thank you out there for watching. You can catch me every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., The Rashad Mills Show, courtesy of PowerPurposeRadio.com, and I will see you guys next week.